Morning, everybody. Happy Sunday morning to you. Happy Sunday morning. Steve had in his introduction there is really something relevant in the chapter coming up in Deuteronomy. He talked about his grandmother. He remembered his grandmother teaching him about the Bible when he was a boy. And what we'll find here in the upcoming chapter of Deuteronomy is Moses reminds the Israelites that God says, let the fathers and mothers teach the children to improve their longevity and the blessing. They'll receive a blessing and they'll have increased longevity. And he didn't say let the tribe of Levi teach them. He said let the fathers and mothers teach them. And we'll see that as we're coming up. And so that just come to my mind when Steve told that about his grandma. I thought it was really relevant. We're, of course, going to turn to Deuteronomy. Find my spot here. Yeah, start 1:4. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 23 is where we're going to pick up. Of course, we're in this book of Deuteronomy, and these are the words. And these are the words. That's verse 1 of chapter 1. These are the words. These are the words that Moses is reviewing with the Israelites as they're in this part of the world on the east side of the Jordan, waiting to go over into the promised land, of course. And it's this second generation. It's those people that have been born or grown up during the 38 years of wilderness wandering that Moses is talking to. And it's a good review for them to remind them what God has done for them ever since their redemption from Egypt. God, with a mighty hand, delivered them out of Egypt and has gotten them to this point. And God is reminding this new generation of that. Not to say that they didn't know it, but a review is always good. And of course, when you've got a job to do like these people are facing when they cross that Jordan River into that Canaan land, it's not going to be just a cakewalk. I mean, you can imagine there's going to be some war and battle. And their faith needs to be strong, and they need to obey God to be successful, because he gives numerous warnings. If they don't obey, they're not going to be successful, and it's going to lead to their demise over time. So it's really important that these people hear these words that Moses is teaching or speaking to them and obey. Not just hear it, let it go in one ear and out the other, but these people need to obey. And of course, this is a law. This is a law that was given by God down to these people at Mount Sinai. And this is, God's already brought them out of Egypt at the time they received this. They've already been saved by Egypt. God's already done something good for them. But now they need to obey. And the generations following needs to obey. So that's where we're at with these Israelites. They need to obey God's words. All right, chapter 4, verse 23. I told y'all to turn there, and then I didn't. All right. I'll read 23 and 24. Take heed unto yourselves, lest ye forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, or the likeness of anything which the Lord thy God hath forbidden thee. For the Lord thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. Now this covenant God's made with these people, this is not something they negotiated. This covenant is all laid out by God and promised by God, because God is the one and only true God. And God, when he makes a covenant, he makes it one way, his way. There ain't no negotiating with it with these Israelites here. So we got to remember that. And in this verse, God is even a jealous God. This don't mean jealous like someone who envies something that they don't have. God's got it all. God is a jealous God because he chooses to be, and he expects these people to obey him and be his people and love God with all their heart and their soul, everything. That's why this says God is a jealous God. It's not because he envies something he don't have. He demands it of these people, is what he demands. All right. Let's see. What did I miss in these? Oh, yeah. This 23, take heed unto yourselves, lest ye forget the covenant which he made with you, and make you graven image or the likeness of anything. You know, that idolatry, these things made by man's hands, we've talked about numerous times. What this is saying, it equals destruction. And this destruction is going to equal a scattered nation, which if we read far enough into the Old Testament, we will see what that means. We will see that it actually happens. All right. Oh, I got to get 25 through 28 here. I got jumped ahead here. When thou shalt beget children and children's children, and ye shall have remained long in your land. This is when they've had kids and they've been in this land a long time, and shall corrupt yourselves. Now, this corruption, how is this going to come about? It's because they are in close proximity to these people who are already in Canaan land. And if they get tied up and messed up, just like with the Midian women that Balaam put out around the camp, if they get tangled up in that and start worshiping, and following idolatrous ways, that's what's going to happen here, is what Moses is relaying to them. And their children will. And it shall corrupt yourselves, and you make graven images or the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord thy God to provoke him to anger. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto ye go over Jordan to possess it. This is in the future, is what Moses is telling. You get into that promised land, and you don't obey, and you start getting tangled up in this idolatrous worship. What does it say? Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. And the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen. That's just those people who are not believers. They've got their own worship. They make idols in worship, and for the different things that people at that time and place, I don't know why they had that. It's something in them that makes them to want to worship stuff like that. It seems so foreign to me that it don't even seem real to me how you could carve an image and put your life, your daily being, and the things that you want to happen and how you want to guide yourself, the outcome that you want, into something that's made by hands. And it don't have to be made by hands. It could just be a thought as well. I mean, there's beliefs out there that they don't have a handmade image or something like that. I mean, they follow those beliefs. And but it just seems so strange and foreign to me how man at that time could get tangled up in that. But they did. And what's really amazing is God, through Moses, is having to warn his people, whom he saved out of Egypt, redeemed them out of Egypt, that you've got to be careful. You got to follow this rule to the T, or you're going to be utterly destroyed. You will, and why it's so appealing to those people. And even they are led astray if they don't watch it. And God has given them the warnings. But anyway, we know it's for sure, it's for real, that if they don't watch what they're doing, they don't do what God says, they're going to be utterly destroyed. They're not going to have longevity, and they're not going to be blessed in their life. All right? There we go. 27, and the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord shall lead you. So they're going to be there probably, but they're going to be few in number compared to those people who don't believe the one true God. And there ye shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. And that verse relates so well to me, those physical attributes of those false gods. I can see that. I mean, it just like I said, to me it seems so foreign, But those people in that world at that time, and even people today, you can see that today. Some people are fooled by those things. All right, 29 through 31. But if from thence thou shalt seek the Lord thy God, thou shalt find him, if thou seek him with all thy heart and with all thy soul. When thou art in tribulation, that's when things are tough, and all these things are come upon thee, even in the latter days, if thou turn to the Lord thy God, and shalt be obedient unto his voice. For the Lord thy God is a merciful God. It's not too late for these people if they make a misstep. God's a merciful God. He will not forsake thee. Now you got to remember some of these laws that God has handed down to these people. Now they can make mistakes, but their fellow Israelites there may execute God's punishment on them right then. So, and we talked about before, there's no jails in this ancient time of Israel, They didn't have the police force and stuff like that, to go out and arrest people and stuff like that. So, a lot of times if they did wrong and it was found out by two or more witnesses, judgment and punishment was given at that time. So sometimes these people didn't have long to mess around. They needed to do what God said. They didn't need to tarry with it. Even though God's merciful and long-suffering, the outcome by not doing the things that God told them to do here can have quick ruin and destruction on these individuals as well. For the Lord God is merciful. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers which he sware unto them. And this covenant goes all the way back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And these generations have been aware of this, that they were from Abraham's time, Abraham didn't just take that covenant and that was told to him by God and laid out to him. He didn't just hide that in his shirt pocket and never tell nobody about it. That was passed down to his sons. Isaac and then Jacob, received that word. So they've been aware of this, and that's why they were wanting God to come and get them out of Egypt at that time. They were, they didn't see that what was going on in Egypt matched what God's covenant with them was going to be. So that's how the word went out from them. And here we are, they're being reminded. 32. Now I'm going to read 32 through 38. For ask now of the days that are past, which were before thee, since the day that God created man upon the earth, and asked from one side of heaven unto the other, whether there has been any such thing as this great thing, or has been heard like it. Did ever people hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of the fire, as thou hast heard and live? Or hath God essayed to go on and take him a nation from the midst of another nation? I'm going to stop right there just a second. I was thinking about that coming down the road this morning, just about God chose these people, this nation. And if that ain't proof that God chose these people from what we see today on the news daily, that they are still in the spotlight, they're still a nation, and I thought, and they're pretty well off. These people, they've been through a lot, and they're small in number, but they're doing okay. And you look at Egypt, where they were redeemed from. And Egypt, if you ask me, had a head start on everybody from what I can kind of tell from back in the day. But look at it now. It pretty much looks like a garbage can from what I can see. And so many other nations that are around that part of the world at that time, they're not prosperous. There's some places that we read about in the Bible that's been wiped plumb off the face of the earth. There's nothing there but bare rock. You can look at Babylon to this day. Of course, Babylon, there's a new city on the outskirts of where it once stood. But if you look at it now and you see where people travel and look where the ancient city of Babylon was, it is nothing but desert. The animals and the critters is about the only thing you see there in that place. But still, God's people, the Israelites, that nation of Israel, as we see it today, to me is just proof, undeniable proof. All right, let me carry on. Or hath God essayed to go and take him a nation from the midst of another nation, by temptations, by signs, and by wonders, and by war, and by a mighty hand? All this happened since Exodus. The mighty hand brought them out. There's been wars with the Amalekites. And by a stretched out arm, by great terrors, according to all the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes. These people, Joshua and Caleb, saw it. Some of the other ones, the younger ones might have saw it. A lot of those, it was right there. The older ones, of course, didn't. They've perished and passed away. All right, 35. Unto thee it was showed that thou mightest know that the Lord, he is God, there is none else beside him. That was showed to these people to see that there is one and only one God. Out of heaven he made thee to hear his voice, that he might instruct thee, and upon earth he showed thee his great fire, and thou heardest his words out of the midst of the fire. Going back to Mount Sinai, that place was a miracle in itself. And then even there, when Moses went up, these people, man's got a tendency to do things the wrong way, and out come the golden calf. Of course, that's been put behind them now. But all right, did I make it to 38? No. And because he loved thy fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and brought thee out in his sight with his mighty power out of Egypt, to drive out nations from before the greater and mightier than thou art, to bring thee in, to give thee their land for inheritance, as it is this day. And, why this particular piece of real estate? It's kind of a mystery, as far as that. But there's one thing for sure. It's got value to it because the world's still pulling and tugging and doing everything they can to keep Israel out of that land. And there's no other way. There's people even on our side of the globe who hate the Jews. It's just the way it is. And after all these years, it's still over that piece of land with God's people in it. All right. Now I'm going to read 39 through 40. Know therefore this day, and consider it in thine heart, that the Lord, he is God in heaven, above and upon the earth, beneath there is none else. Thou shalt keep therefore his statutes, his commandments, which I command thee this day, that it may go well with thee, and with thy children after thee, and that thou mayest prolong thy days upon the earth, which the Lord thy God giveth thee forever. All right. So now we're going to take a quick turn here, kind of in the same chapter. We're going from the law and obeying to the cities of refuge. Moses is revisiting this at the end of this chapter. So I'm going to read 41 through 43. Then Moses severed 3 cities on this side Jordan toward the sunrise. And of course, they're on that east side of the Jordan at this time. They've not crossed over in it. This is going to be that area that Reuben and Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh is going to get. So there's going to be some cities of refuge like we talked about in that portion of the world, part of that part of the country, and that part of that nation once it's established. And that the slayer might flee, remember, and that's not a murderer, remember, that's the guy accidental taking of somebody's life, how it turned out. And in order to keep that man's who was slayed, his avenger, from killing the man who accidentally done it, he's going to have a city of refuge he can go to. And that's where this is going to be, where the slayer can go. Might flee, which should kill his neighbor unawares, and hated him not in times past, and that fleeing unto one of these cities he might live. Namely, Bezer in the wilderness, in the plain country of the Reubenites, and Ramoth in Gilead of the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan of the Manassites. So all this is in that northern area up there, what we call near that Golan Heights area now on the modern day maps where that's at. All right, now I'm going to read 44 through 49. This is rehearsal of Israel's law. All right, 10 Commandments. And this is the law which Moses set before the children of Israel. Of course, we've read this back in Exodus. This is familiar territory. And, all right, let me read it, 44 through 49. All right, these are the testimonies, verse 45, in the statutes and judgments which Moses spake unto the children of Israel after they came out of Egypt. On this side Jordan, in the valley over against Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. whom Moses and the children of Israel smote after they come forth out of Egypt. Verse 47, and they possessed his land in the land of Og, king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, which were on this side of the Jordan toward the sunrising, from Aroer, which is by the bank of the river Arnon, even unto Mount Sion, which is Hermon, and all the plain on this side Jordan eastward unto the sea of the plain under the springs of Pisgah. So we're still just in that side, the east side of the Jordan, waiting to go over into the promised land with these. All right. And this is pretty much Moses telling where they're at now, their location. All right. Chapter 5. Now we get into it. And I'm going to read. Let's see. Chapter 5, we're going to revisit God's covenant with Israel, the 10 Commandments, which we just said. Israel instructs Moses to go back to the mount to hear all that God had to say to them. That was the repeated portion. And then I'm going to start out and read verse 1 here. Learn, obey, and do. We'll see that. Chapter 5, verse 1. And Moses called all Israel and said unto them, this is everybody, hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your ears this day, that ye may learn them and keep and do them. So there's a lot going on in just this one verse. They're going to hear the statutes and the laws, and they're to hear it and do it and obey it. A lot of action for these people. 2 through 5, let me read those. The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb, another name for Sinai. That's where the law was given to them. The Lord made not this covenant with our fathers, but with us, even us, who are all of us here alive this day. That which was given back at Sinai is still relevant today with these people, is what Moses is telling them. The Lord talked with you face to face in the mount out of the midst of the fire. And Moses says, verse 5, I stood between the Lord and you at that time to show you the word of the Lord, for ye were afraid by reason of the fire, and went not up into the mount, saying. And this fire, this was enough to put the terror in these people that they did not want to get too close to that. This is relevant. If anybody reads much, there's a place in the world where they think they've actually found that mount where it's been burnt like that. I'm not getting into that, but you can read it and make your own decisions and see. But there is a place in the world that fits the bill. Now, whether or not there's a sign poked in the ground there that says this is the Mount Sinai that what we just read about got burnt, it fits the bill from what the people around it have studied it and look and see. But anyway, I'll let you research that. Let's see where I got to. I stood by, I am the Lord, here, verse 6, I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. This is said over and over throughout this book of the Bible and other, where we've been. And if something is mentioned that many times over and over, I think it's there for a reason. Think about it. He brought them out of Egypt, out of bondage. He's reminding them. And, maybe they need to be reminded over and over. That may be what they forget. It gets them in such trouble in the future. For these people to forget what God did for them, what God offered them, what God gave them, they need to remember it every day. And that's pretty much what we're seeing here in this chapter as we're reading along here. All right. Let me get on up and finish. All right, in the house of bondage. Now, I went one too many. I was supposed to read 6 through 21. Thou shalt have, here's the commandments. Thou shalt have none other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generations. And this is not God punishing right here. This is just something. This is the iniquity of the fathers. This is man's fault, is what's going to happen. When man fails to do and obey and hear these words and do the things that God has told them, the outcome is going to be bad. It's not God's fault. It's the Father's fault, is what this is. So, wouldn't, some people, I've heard people, well, boy, God, he's rough on them. He's going to hit them to the fourth generation. Well, that ain't God's fault. That's one thing to remember to tell somebody, that's what I'd tell them when they told me that. And I've heard that before from some people say, well, boy, God, he's going to give it to them for the third and fourth generation. And I've heard somebody even say that that's why they've done the bad things they've done. I've heard that person actually say that. So I was doomed anyway for the fourth generation, so I'll just do what I want to. I've actually heard somebody say that. But anyway. Yeah, I got to keep going here. I got to go all the way to 21. Okay, we're to showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Verse 11, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh the name in vain. And that one's not to be taken as lightly as I've heard some people take it, try to limit that to maybe saying a bad word or something like that. You get down and study that real close right there, and that's to use God's name in any flippant way, where it has no value or little value. That's not just, there's no margin of error there for that. So it's really serious. It's real serious and not be limited to just somebody saying a bad word. It's using the name of God in a way it has no value, and it's used flippantly, like it's not worth anything. And of course, saying bad words with it, that's obviously one way to do it, but it's a lot deeper than that when you get to studying that. All right. Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. That one's old, really. That's even before that come down. That was part of the thing. That was part of the plan back before Moses come down off of Mount Sinai. That Sabbath day was back when Adam was created. If you think about it, when God created the world, and he took the Sabbath day. And then I think even when manna was given to them, they got hungry before they was on Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai, they got hungry, and God provided manna. And on what day were they not to gather manna? The Sabbath day. So that one was holy for these people. And there's another way. Every seventh day, don't forget what God's done for you, for them people. There it is, keeping that in line where they don't forget. They're always thinking about God on their mind, 24/7. And Lord knows that's hard to do today. He knows we're in that shape. That the world we have around us and surrounding us, and the bombardment of entertainment and things are going on in this hectic world, I think God knows it. We're faced with it big time. You think they had a lot to distract them back when they was crawling around in the wilderness there. It's a lot now. It may not be as dirty and hard and as many steps to take in the heat and the dry, but today, man's got it hard to not be distracted. So, let me see, where did I get to? Thou shalt take the name there, keep the Sabbath. All right, 6 days. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt do no work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thine ox, nor thine ass, nor any of the cattle, nor the stranger that is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant shall rest as well as thou. Verse 15, and remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt. Remember, he's telling them, remember again, you were serving in Egypt, you were in bondage, and that the Lord thy God brought thee out of thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. It wasn't no easy thing for these people to come out of Egypt, this big number of people. God did it with a mighty hand. Therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. Verse 16, honor thy father and thy mother, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee, that thy days may be prolonged, and that it may go well with thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. That commandment there is actually got a blessing attached to that. If you see that there, honor thy father and thy mother, and your days may be prolonged. That's really important to the point that God had an attachment on there with a blessing just to obey the commandment. Of course, thou shalt not kill. We know that's murder. Neither shalt thou commit adultery. You know, if they ain't obedient and if they ain't faithful to themselves, you know, and there are other people there, how are they going to be faithful to God? That's important. Neither shalt thou bear false witness against thy neighbor. You know, that lying and back talking and gossip and all that falls into that, really. If you think it, telling things about your neighbor, it ain't true. People can't die. Back then, I bet they couldn't wait to tell them that they put their tent up crooked or something like that and murmur around, talk about it. Neither shalt thou desire thy neighbor's wife, neither shalt thou covet thy neighbor's house, his field. If you go back and look in Exodus when this was first given to the people, this part wasn't in there, the field. So what we think the reason it's in here now, what are they going to have when they cross the Jordan? They're going to have their own land. They're going to have their own fields. So that's what we got. Or his manservant, or maidservant, his ox or his ass, or anything that is thy neighbor's. Well, they're ready to come in here this morning, so I'll stop. I got a little ways. Like I said, a lot of this is repeat, what you have already read and heard in Exodus and the previous books. But I'm going to dismiss us with